Okay, ZBA, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines will remain off. Go for it.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you and welcome to the work session of the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals for March 11th, 2025. We do have a work session this evening, but prior to entering the work session, we're going to call for an executive session. So therefore, I make a motion to go into executive session to discuss a legal matter.
Second.
Concur.
Thank you.
Okay, ZBA, we are back on recording. Please continue.
Thank you. I'd like to, go entering our work session now. We have one administrative application, and that is 52 Oyster Shores Road LLC at 52 Oyster Shores Road, East Hampton, Suffolk, tax map number 300-92-6-18. And that's to allow a reconstruction of the residence with no change in gross floor area or footprint, and to allow a stone walkway, outdoor shower, and bluff stairs to remain on a property containing a bluff and tidal wetlands. Morgan, would you like to give us a little report on this?
So for this application, the work was started without any permits, and they got a stop work order in 2023. The house is currently basically gutted down to the studs. And it's basically a reconstruction of the residence, which was built back in the 60s. So it's pre-existing to natural resources special permit regulations, and to legalize some minor structures that are not on the most recent CO, which was from 1990. There's no proposed increase in GFA or coverage, and the setbacks are also remaining the same. The property is an HPOD, it's on 3 Mile Harbor, and it's 100% pre-existing non-conforming clearing. In conversations with the applicant, the planning department requested as conditions of approval, if it were to go administratively, that some mitigation includes a 25-foot revegetation buffer from the bluff line with a conservation easement over it, and also an engineered drainage plan for the driveway because it's on a bit of a slope. There's also an IA sanitary system upgrade proposed, which is mandatory because the work is considered a substantial improvement.
Any questions, board?
No.
Just curious how big the lot is.
The lot is a half an acre. It's 20,352 square feet.
This hasn't been before us.
It has not. No, the most recent CO is from 1990s. The history is pretty sparse.
So, I mean, this is in a point of 3 Mile Harbor that's in trouble, right? This is this is the area of Oyster Shores.
Mm-hmm.
And the planning department proposed a 25-foot buffer.
Correct, yes.
Do you feel that's adequate?
I think considering that there's no increase in the size of the residence, it's going to be an overall improvement to the environmental conditions of the property. In addition to the IA sanitary system, which is always nice on a compromised water body like 3 Mile Harbor, but again, that's mandatory. So can't really be considered mitigation for the work. But yeah, the planning department felt that 25 feet was appropriate, considering the scope of the work.
Right. The only thing I would say is that if it came to us as an application, we would have debate about the buffer.
Right.
Is there any way of increasing it a little bit, like maybe 30 feet or something? Let's get a little bit more buffer to just,
Yeah,
what do you feel as a board?
I think the 30-foot number is a good one because that's one that we've used in the past in this situation.
Right. What do you feel?
I would like to, if there's an excess for it, we also do 50-foot buffers sometimes, so.
I think we got to be careful of the nexus, that's all, but
I'm just speaking out loud, but can I just ask, so I imagine, because this can go admin, everything is out of wetland jurisdiction?
Correct. So there's can you see this dashed line here?
I'm sorry, I can't read anything on there.
Yeah, so that dashed line here is the 100-foot. So I think the deck is technically like 99.6, but it's not increasing in footprint or anything. So it doesn't require.
It's an in place in kind.
And it's in place in kind, yes.
I guess I was confused because it says to allow a stone walkway, outdoor shower.
Yeah,
and
so
stairs
that's
to remain.
The stone walkway right here is more than 100 feet. Those small minor structures just don't appear on the most recent CO. So just kind of to make sure that everything on the property is, being transparent about what's actually getting relief on the property. But they do only require a natural resources special permit and no variances.
So I agree with my fellow board members on at least
And
the 30-foot.
that's one of the requirements of an admin, is no variances.
Right.
Correct.
So that's, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, I think,
I agree with Chairman Deleon's suggestion about the 30 feet,
Okay.
especially since it's in a HPOD and it's already pre-existing
I agree.
non-conforming 100% clear. So, whatever we could do to protect the environment, I agree with what he suggested.
Okay, so therefore, I'll make a motion then for 52 Oyster Shores Road LLC, 52 Oyster Shores Road, East Hampton, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-92-6-18 to allow the application to proceed administratively with the condition that the buffer be 30 feet.
Including the easement over the
Yes.
revegetation?
Yep.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
Thank you. Next, we go into our post-hearing decisions. We have Hampton Lane LLC at 31 Hampton Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-174-5-18. The size and location is 10,606 square feet at 31 Hampton Lane, Beach Hampton, Section 1, Lot number 41 through 45, map number 1203, filed 5/13/36. And Amagansett. The description is to allow an existing walkway and clearing to remain within minimum wetland setbacks, to construct two second-story deck expansions, a shed, and AC relocation within minimum wetland setbacks, to allow a trellis to remain within pyramid regulations, minimum wetland and side yard setbacks, and to allow a patio to remain within the minimum front yard and wetland setbacks on a property containing a freshwater wetland, inland, and beach vegetation. Member Mearing, you want to kick us off?
Yes, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. So this public hearing on this application took place on January 21st, 2025. The TAM was written by Morgan Slater. It was dated December 30th, 2024. The applicant was represented by Thomas Muse, and as I recall, no members of the public participated in this public hearing. As the chairman just said, this is a little over 10,000 square foot parcel. It's just shy of a quarter acre. There was a lot of commentary per the agent about how small the lot is, but just to put it in context, this lot size is certainly not atypical of this part of the neighborhood in Beach Hampton overall. Many lots around it are actually smaller, and it's pre-existing substandard to zoning minimum lot size by 47%. The parcel also has 2 front yards on both Hampton Lane and Central Ave, and as discussed heavily in the application, there's an area of wetland, I think it's about 2,500 square feet of wetland that defines a meaningful part of the west side of the property. We know the applicant purchased the property in 2023, chose to purchase a small lot with meaningful wetland and duneland constraints, and also without the benefit of an updated C of O. The last C of O in the record was in 2015, so except for the proposed second floor deck and the shed, those are 2 of the asks, the rest of the variances appear to reflect things that were done on the property by the prior owner, many of which would have needed variances and an NRSP. And again, this was a modest 1,200 square foot house with no finished basement on the property, and it's very much in keeping with the scale and development in the Beach Hampton neighborhood. At the end of the public hearing, we closed the hearing but left the record open in order to take in a couple things from Mr. Muse. Needed to submit the affidavit of posting and service. Also, he wanted to consult with his client regarding an easement and to get documentation. There's an issue because the septic tank is under the stone patio, and there was a discussion about whether or not it could remain, and he said he was going to talk. So we received all those things into the record. Okay, so the most current survey we relied on was dated January 3rd, 2024. However, there are also surveys in the record that are important and germane to at least my thinking about this application deliberation. So there's one from October 17, 2020, one from 1/24/2022, another from 11/2/22, as well as the 2015 survey that relates to the last C of O. We note that the older surveys had topography on them. The newest one doesn't have the topo on it. And so I think there are 2 important things relevant to my deliberation and decision-making related to the prior surveys. The 10/17/20 survey showed the western edge of the stone patio aligned with the west side of the house. The prior survey, actually, I think the 2015 also showed that there was some stone walkway that had been removed. And now the later surveys show that the stone patio has been extended to the west. And I actually couldn't tell if it's been extended forward, but it also needs a front yard setback variance. The other second thing that becomes very clear in the different surveys is the change in the clearing. In the earlier surveys, clearing was said to be either 3,500 square feet or 3,100 square feet, and it's now 7,320 square feet per the 11/2/22 and the 1/3/24 surveys. Aerials we looked at in the record, especially 2010 aerial, indicated significant woody vegetation on the west and south part of the property. Okay, so with respect to sort of decisions here, let me start with the elements of this application that the applicant wants to construct new. So that's the expansion of the second floor decks, as well as the construction of a shed. I think the number was 192 square feet for the shed. With respect to these items, 3 items, two deck extensions and a shed, the variances requested are very substantial. There's a 76 variance and a 73-foot variance for the decks, and the shed needs a 53-foot variance. And related to the NRSP, for the shed, there will be disturbance and reduction to a portion of previously what seems to be undisturbed dune land and some of the topography where the shed is going to go. So with respect to these 3 elements, I weigh the requested structure first relative to the benefits to the applicant. And I find that the benefits to the applicant for these things to be meaningful, and not really other designs that can eliminate or reduce them significantly. With respect to the shed, I do understand that this is a 1,200 square foot house. I believe there can be no basement in that area. And so, the need for a shed for storage is legitimately beneficial to them. Many other properties have similar conditions. I do believe that there is already disturbed areas potentially where the shed could go on the southeast part of the property, but it's not something we discussed in the public hearing, and it's not something I can demand. Aside from that, the shed is proposed to be in a place that I believe maximizes its distance from the wetland. Mr. Muse submitted into the record after the hearing showing where staked where it's going to be. Was happy to see it was going to save that mature oak near it. And so I know from my fellow board members, there was a lot of concern and a feeling that this was a big ask, but I am willing to approve the shed with some of the conditions that we're going to get to. With respect to the second floor deck expansions, they're going in over a place that is already partially disturbed. It makes sense and is a benefit to them to expand the decking where they are related to the house. And I think that given that they're raised and preferable to seeing more things happen on the ground. So I'm also think that they meet the standards of the variances and the NRSP. With respect to the variances to legalize the stone walkway, the trellis, I find that they're not going to impact the character of the neighborhood. The volume of the trellis that requires pyramid is from the side yard, pyramid variance is not substantial, and it won't likely create disturbance to the neighborhoods. I mean, I really do see the width and length of that stone walkway as pretty unnecessary. The applicant acknowledged the trellis does nothing for them. It's just aesthetic. And I do think the only benefit to them is granting the variance is sort of avoiding the need to do the work and the expense to reduce them. So I'm willing to approve those approve those. Turning to the rest of the variances for the stone patio, I note that impervious patio, as we said, was expanded without permits. I think it requires the largest of all the variances to the wetlands and also a front yard setback. I do not see it meeting the variance or NRSP standards because of how much it has already, but did disturb, and how close it is. This is, very impervious surface, getting very close to the wetlands. And if I think about it as a board member, would I have approved this if it came to me as a board member? I believe this is not something I would have expanded. And moreover, the expansion of the second floor decks hopefully provide some meaningful additional outdoor living space. And with respect to the variance for the clearing, 50-foot variance to clear within next to the wetlands, I also would deny that variance. It does not meet any of the NRSP standards as I see it, so I'm denying that. So all in, I approve the shed, the expansion of second floor decks, and the variances allow the stone walkway and trellis to remain. I would, I'm actually, it's the wetland variance on the stone patio that I'm not approving. I want to hear what my fellow board members think about the front yard setback variance. But I do believe as a condition of this, the scenic easement and the buffer, as per the sketch that Morgan showed us at the public hearing, should be implemented. I guess I also want to talk about if there should be some revegetation in there. Miscanthus should be removed. I think irrigation has to be removed. We need dry wells for the outdoor shower. And I also want to say on the survey related to the shed, it shows an extension of the stone, what I believe is the stone walkway from where it exists to the shed. And I don't know, it didn't have a separate variance, but it seems like it's an overkill on more stone. And then the other last thing that came up, I think Member Berger asked, would they be willing to covenant to making clear that the areas of the upper decks will not be closed in to create living space? And I believe Mr. Muse said he'd be happy to do that. So, and then I guess no treated lumber for the decking. So that's where I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if we can, after we go, maybe we come back to a discussion on the clearing, because I think,
Yeah.
I agree with you on the clearing, but I think maybe we can come to a resolution on the clearing, because I don't think it would be proper to issue a building permit if they're overcleared by the zoning board. So I'm wondering if we can just have a discussion on that. So
In a sense, I'm saying what I'm approving. Obviously, I feel like there's still some more conditions. I agree, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I generally agree with everything Member Meering said. I was, the shed was also disturbing because it is on top of dune land. The applicant said, there's not much vegetation there, but it's still sand, it's still a dune. And however, as Member Meering stated, when we got an updated document after the hearing on February 4th from Muse Design, where he addressed all the questions that we had at the board. And along with that, he sent multiple photos and design of the shed, how it was going to look. And as already stated, he had the shed staked out and he took it for every vantage point that you could see on the property. And we were all concerned, I believe, about the oak tree that was in the way and possibly in the way. And it looks like that will be spared. And I'm sympathetic to people needing storage. So I think I am now going to approve that shed. Trellis and walkway, the trellis, I believe in the document he sent us afterward, they said they do have some down lighting in the trellis, but that's about it in terms of what it really does for them. But likewise, I feel like that's there. I don't think it's doing any harm. It's also well screened from the neighbor to the east. The upper decks, they're not adding that much. They're basically taking the decks and they're coming a little bit closer to the wetlands. I believe each one's expanding by about 3 feet toward the wetlands. So they are large variances, but they're not, I think it's it's not bad for them to add this extra space without going really crazy and asking for a whole lot of things. So I am approving those two, and with the CNR, that they'll never be made into living habitable space. But the patio is the thing I had problem with too. And not exactly sure when the patio came, but it definitely got expanded. And they had photos of the patio. I don't know if it was photos that Member Mearing took or that the applicant submitted or planning gave us. It looks to me like that patio, not saying to get rid of the whole thing, but it looks like that some of those could be shortened and they could be moved to the east, at least increasing some of the variance from the wetlands. The stone bothers me being so close to the wetlands there. It's 23 feet on the survey. And then there was also a question about the septic being under the patio, but Mr. Muse did address that also with Suffolk County, and their recommendation was to bring the septic tank, the top cover of the septic tank, raise it up to be level with the patio and the stone in there. So I would like to have that patio, some of that patio removed. I'm trying to find the photo that is.
Well, because it needs a front yard setback too, right?
What's the front yard setback on it? Patio 77 and 3.7.
It says, yeah.
Yeah, 3.7.
3.7 feet, right.
3.7 feet variance. And I'm okay with the 3.7 foot variance for this.
So you're okay with the
front
front patio?
With the front patio, but I'd like part of it to be taken out. Maybe to make it flush with the house and bring that back, another 5 or 6 feet from the wetlands. Bothers me to have the stone there, and that's the major part of the wetlands. There's chairs on it, well, they had chairs next to the house
That would be
too.
further away.
And this is bothersome with the clearing too, because as stated in the 2010 view, it was a lot of vegetation, and now it looks so cleared. Not even just being winter. It's like stuff is gone. But, so we can talk about the clearing. I'd like to do something about that, but I would like to get that patio, get some back on it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The deck expansions are in a logical location on the property, and I don't feel will diminish or degrade or damage the property's natural features. The 55-foot, I want to go back to the patio.
What'd you say?
I want to go back to the patio. That's my last issue. The 55.7-foot variance to allow the existing walkway to remain is in a most conforming location and acts as a path to the front door. And it does not appear it will damage, degrade, or pollute the wetlands it's associated with. I agree. I initially had some concerns about the trellis because, they're substantial variances, and, one has to think about, does it meet the standard? But it's very well screened. And I don't see it having an impact on the neighborhood. And I don't think it's going to create any disturbance to the neighborhood. So I would be willing to grant that as well. The proposed shed, it is a very substantial variance, but again, I do think it does meet the threshold for grant of a natural resource special permit. And that oak tree had a lot to do with my decision. Now, going back to the patio, this is a discussion we can have, because 77-foot variance to allow this patio to remain 23 feet from a wetland is excessive and very substantial. And obviously, it was stated in the TAM, and it was a concern at the public hearing that it was constructed over a septic tank, which does not really comply with Suffolk County Department of Health standards. But Mr. Muse, submitted his information from the Suffolk County Department of Health, and the inspector cited that in any area or under any part of a building, roadway, or driveway, or other improvements that does or may prevent reasonable access for repair or maintenance of the system. So obviously, this has proper access to maintain. And the inspector is, now, I didn't see anything officially in the record from the inspector.
I was going to ask about that if it
So I don't know if we
happened.
can just,
Oh, was
you
it
know,
his-
take, not that I'm questioning the submission, but we don't really have anything from the health department. So the inspector is, I don't know if we could get something from the health department, but he's also, if approved, recommending that we raise the cast iron manhole cover to be flush with slate to provide access for repair or maintenance, which is a very big part of this, should we approve it. Plans will be updated to show manhole access and existing patio if board members are in agreement. Please, okay.
That
So
would be
I
your
guess,
accessibility.
would
So the
that
manhole-
be a condition?
Yeah, I think we
of
can make it a
approval?
condition, absolutely.
Okay.
But that manhole is, and raising that cover is signs that it means that it is a serviceable, because it's a septic.
Yes.
It's a.
And that's how I interpreted this when I read it.
Mhm.
So if that's clearly stated, then I would be okay with grant, but it would have to be, again, like we said, a condition of approval to make sure that it actually happens. The scenic easement and the buffer is a plus, should be implemented with revegetation. So yes, I agree with my fellow board members, but we can obviously talk about the clearing and
Yeah.
other things.
Yeah, thank you. I largely agree with my fellow board members. I go over item by item. I think you start on all of these lots in Amagansett and elsewhere in town, asking about these variances always look very large, but they have no choice because we have wetlands right adjacent to both properties. Some of our properties are wetlands themselves, as it is here. There's nothing you can do that's not going to require a variance. So I'm not as shocked by the number associated with the variance rather than the intent of the work being done. The numbers are going to be large, anything you do on this property. Having said that, when I go through the patios, I wasn't as bothered as the rest of the board members seem to be about the size of the patio. I agree with the fact that it did extend out closer to the wetland, and it shouldn't. But I think in that locations, it was mentioned by Mr. Muse and also by other board members that these are not going to affect the character of the neighborhood. They're not going to affect anyone directly in terms of passing through that, passing by the house and or the activity there. Given how tight the lot was, I was not bothered by that. I understand the complaint from the other board members. The second floor patio, the same, it requires I think it's a good possible use for them to expand their opportunity to live on the property with the least amount of damage. I think that's very good. I think the trellis, because it has the protective vegetation nearby, 2.5 feet pyramid variance always stops us in our tracks, and we have to ask ourselves. But this is one that it's a very slight structure to begin with, and I think that protection there is something that makes it a non-factor in terms of its height, as far as I can see. I think that most of what's gotten said here and asked for and the scenic easement is a big plus. I want to mention that. Is a reasonable request on a small lot. On a small lot, what can you do? And especially ones that are going to run into not only side yard variance problems, but also wetland problems as are here. However, where I am going to disagree with my fellow board members is with the shed. I think that Mr. Muse himself sent us on photos on page 6, which are images 3 and 4, and on page 7, which is image 5, which for me spell out exactly what my problem with it is. This is not just an area where we're concerned with wetlands and side yard setbacks, but with dunescape and original topography. I see the topography and the dunescape there. When I first visited the site and I saw where they wanted to put it, I thought the very little bit that's left that reflects what this was natively is about to be encroached upon by a shed, and it bothered me. And if you go to, I think it's here on page 5, figure 2, I think you see that the shed, although it's to be elevated, and we see a line for the existing the topography to say, nonetheless, there would have to be a raised walkway to come to the shed, which is going to require a fair amount of fill and an additional stone patio to come in there. That's the only way in which you're going to get into this there. And the way it's drawn now, there's other ways, we'll
raised
get to
up.
that. But the way it's drawn here, that's a significant amount of work. When I look at that and I ask myself, on these lots, what is possible for us to control? I think there are times when a reasonable effort has to be made on our part to see that how difficult it is for the client to reach all the standards that we're looking for in terms of meeting an NRSP, and as well as any of the other variance standards. In this one here, I can approve all the items that we've already mentioned. I can go with those. I can live with that. I want to talk about, as the chair has said, talk about clearing a bit. But I am going to deny the shed because I think, for the reasons I've stated, that it's on the last little bit of but this dunescape there. Whenever we can in Beach Hampton preserve some of that to see what the remnant was, we try to. And I think it's more significantly going to damage the area than has been stated by the applicants. So I will approve the rest of the application, but deny the shed.
Thank you.
Kind of-
So I'm going to start with the shed. Originally, I was in the camp of member Johan of denying the shed, but when I got into the TAM and reading the TAM, it says, the TAM itself says the shed is in its most conforming location, which gave me pause to say, and perhaps we should approve it. So I think I'm in agreement with my other board members that it's approval based on that standard and that statement from the planning board. The only thing I noticed, and this is more of a building department issue, but what is the setback on the shed?
9 foot 11. And
From the
Is
wetlands?
it 10? No,
It's
side
10
yard
feet.
setback. Because it's just showing
10
an
and 10. on
Yeah, I know.
the
So I'm
survey.
not sure what the exact,
I thought I saw 9.6 here, 911 and 3
9, 11 and
quarters.
3/4 is where they
9,
have
11
it,
and
which is
3/4.
already
it must be
required.
less because I'm just bringing up the AC location can't be outside within a side yard setback. That's all. I just saw the AC location. So
Oh, I
I
didn't
would just
even-
make a standard that the AC location cannot be within a side yard setback.
But the shed, Mr. Chair, is meeting rear and side.
The shed's not noticed for a variance, I'd say,
Yeah.
so it's fine.
Confirm that, right? That, okay.
Oh, this one is quarter inch off.
I'm okay with the other, I agree with my board members on the other issues. There is, I think, a discussion to have now on the size of the patio. Do we come to agreement on that? And then the clearing. And so we have a mixed feeling on the size of the patios. How many do we have to cut it back? Who said cut it back?
So for me,
I said cut
I'm
it
sorry.
back.
Yeah, so I would want to, because I do not think it meets the standards for a front yard setback. I would want to cut it back to meet the side yard the front yard setback, excuse me. And I mean, in a way, I wanted to deny the wetland variance. Could, if the other board members say it, could I be okay cutting the west side of it back to where it was on one of those 2022 surveys?
Yeah, where was that? 2020.
I think it was there was a January 2022 survey.
I had a later one that you mentioned earlier, but.
Yeah.
June 2020.
Right, because it used to be there.
Yeah.
And it did get expanded this week too.
Well, I was looking at the picture.
You're okay with it,
Patio under the
right?
deck, isn't it?
Okay with it?
Yeah.
Ed, you were okay with the
No.
patio?
Yeah, I was okay with the patio.
Well, it was bothersome to me. It is impervious and it's the closest 23 feet from the wetland. So the runoff, the stormwater, whatever else they do on that patio could all have a negative impact. I was concerned about that in the NRSP side of it. Even though it's not going to be noticed from anywhere, character of the
Well, I
neighborhood.
think,
But as far as,
I think the analysis for me would be, would we approve it? If it
Right.
came to us on analysis, and I think we would have a conversation about it extending beyond the house closer to the wetlands. I think I'm going to agree with you on this. I think the front yard setback is okay. But, go ahead.
So you're,
I'm gonna side with them on the fact that the patio should be pulled back to the extent of the,
should meet the front yard.
No, we're talking about wetlands, so I'm thinking about bringing it to the level, to where the existing upper deck is, or to the, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah, we're
and-
talking about moving it back.
So in
to
line with
side of the house.
with the deck above.
I would agree with you all on that.
Right, so we're talking this line right here.
Mhm.
I don't know if this
Right.
picture helps. It was a
Yeah.
good shot, but
That's
I
a-
thought it
that's a
was like
really good
one
point,
square or
Terry.
2 squares. I don't know.
It should just be,
It looked like
there
about 6
was a
feet.
survey. We can name one of the surveys that had it to
Mhm.
what you're saying, and we can say it should be cut back to that survey because the side of the patio aligns with the west side of the house.
Here's this survey.
Yeah.
Survey dated 10/17/2020. Showed
Okay.
it where it lined up with the house.
But it didn't, see, it was, I think it met its front yard setback at that point.
Okay,
Anyway,
see, I've just pulled it up, so if you wants to look at it, that's the 2020 survey.
That would be very
Seems
good.
So, yeah, you want to revert back to the
Recommendation.
2020 survey?
Now, is that just for the western alignment, if that
For the
2020 survey?
2020 survey. Okay.
Let me just
I'll
verify.
revert back to the 2020. Then if
Looks
it's
like it's just for the side yard
brought
there.
it back,
right, yeah.
It's for the side.
we're all happy.
Yeah.
So it cuts even with that. So let's say to the 2020 survey.
Okay.
Now, what about the clearing?
Ooh.
I don't want to approve a zero lot line, a zero,
I don't
a
either.
zero clearing,
I do not.
100% variance.
Yeah, that's.
Morgan, how much, I can't, on your sketch, the blue line, which is where the buffer is,
Yeah.
how much does that solve of the 50-foot variance need from the wetland?
For the clearing,
If it were re-veg, just how much,
what-
what's the
oh, like-
distance?
what would be the greatest distance of
Yeah.
clearing for re-veg?
That's 50 foot?
I don't think it's,
No, what is that
No,
line?
well, the variance was 50 feet because this survey shows clearing within the wetland.
Oh, that's that blue line,
The blue line is the recommended easement.
Yeah, the
Right.
easement.
which should then represent the clearing.
well,
Red line, I think was, oh no, that was the
I'm not-
project.
I'm just, that's a
I'm not
question, that's a question,
understanding.
not a
Wouldn't the blue
statement.
line also represent clearing?
wait, my question I was trying to get to is, so that whole area, the whole thing is cleared right down to the wetlands, right? Zero.
Yes.
Right. So all I'm asking, you can see the wetland line there.
Mhm.
And then I'm looking at the blue line, and I'm just trying to understand how much, let's say we wanted a revegetated buffer.
Mhm.
So I'm just trying to understand that, what the 50 feet would go down to.
The largest distance from the clearing limit shown on the survey to the edge of the buffer is about 22 and a half feet.
22 and a half feet.
So again, the 2020 survey has a much tighter edge of clearing.
No. Even, I think one of the
It shows
2022
that it's been
surveys.
cleared, within that time.
I,
Are you okay? I'm okay with the suggested.
with revegetating up to the easement?
Yes,
Yes, yeah.
I think I'm okay with
I
that.
think the only reason why the planning department held back on making an explicit revegetation recommendation was because there's just a little uncertainty with what the clearing is like today, because these clearing limits were flagged back in 2022 by our department, and they haven't touched them. Like, they haven't maintained the clearing. So it's a bit of a question mark of what the actual clearing is today. So that was the only reason why we held back on an explicit revegetation recommendation, just because it was hard to quantify what
So
to
that
recommend.
distance is what from the?
So
Wetlands.
the largest like revegetation, according to this survey, would be 22 feet from the current clearing limits. So these dashed lines with these thick black dots are the clearing limits now. So it's really just this area up in here that would technically be revegetated.
Wait, what are you saying? Up, I can't see where your cursor is.
So,
Because if I remember from my field report, down there, okay. Because if I remember from my field report, the northern part of the property is dune land, and it's got dune vegetation on it, right? So we don't want them to revegetate that. We want it to be a pristine thing under the easement. But like as you just showed, as you get further down, it's just naked, right?
Yeah.
Basically up to the wetland, and that's where we'd want the revegetation, swinging around to the bottom.
So what if we began it at the black dot? That's
Can you blow that
just-
up a little?
The lowest black
That's
dot?
west of the upper deck extension, the deck's expansion.
This black
So this is a,
Black dot
black
there.
dot.
Can we
Yeah.
Do we start there and go wrap around?
I mean, if a surveyor staked out the easement, it would be pretty obvious like where then would need to be revegetated for the easement being staked out.
So the suggestion is to vegetate within the easement.
Right, I mean, the easement covers the wetland, but
Yeah,
I'm sort of thinking about the easement outside of the wetland as the buffer.
mm-hmm.
Okay, and then there is nothing within 10 feet from that easement, right?
Oh, he had asked that we
Because
make
he
sure we
said
carve
make sure
out.
that it, yeah,
think
that
I-
it meets
Blue is
that 10.
What's the blue? The blue is the
Blue
easement?
is the easement.
Okay, so I'm fine with that. I'm
Yeah.
fine with the easement.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
Absolutely.
Perfectly fine with that.
and the revegetation up to, until you get to the dune lands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that would just be a plan approved by the
Conditioner.
commission to be approved by the building.
And obviously,
But planning department,
yeah,
right?
they would recommend what should go there. Woody.
Okay, we okay with that? So let's recap. Shed okay, trellis okay, walkway okay, deck conforms to 2020 survey,
20, so, yep.
and the clearing is to the limit of the easement.
Yes.
Is that council?
Patio cut back to the house.
Yeah,
Did you
you said
say
the
that one?
20.
Did you say that one?
The 2020
Yeah,
survey.
to the
2020,
2020
right,
survey.
right. And,
Okay,
and they did say they would remove the miscanthus too.
Yeah.
It's already been offered.
Can I ask one more question? I know I asked during the hearing. I don't think you were here, Jameson. So we have, just don't jump on me. It's not our jurisdiction, but they built a trash bin off their property and the fence is off the property. So I'm not saying we can tell them to change it, but can it get referred to the, I don't know, code or the building department? Because I don't think you're supposed to have any structure off your property. So I just wanted to raise it to council.
more of a highway department thing.
Yeah, for code enforcement.
So just, I would like to, refer it. So we don't have the jurisdiction to tell them, I don't think, to change it, but that's all for me.
Okay,
So
thank you.
you want to recap that, council?
No, Chairman Deline, this,
was the only one that was split, right?
right.
Yeah, just me.
Got it.
But the information also that Mr. Muse gave us about Suffolk County, can we have some sort of clarification or? Because there are certain recommendations, but there's nothing really in the record.
Well, it should be conditioned that they bring, that his suggestion that they bring the
Documentation.
The septic tank cover.
Yes.
septic tank cover to the level of the patio.
Yes, okay.
What is the
I
vice,
think that satisfies
And that
serviceability.
could be in the conditions.
the vice chair, were you saying that you want the formal documentation? from
No,
the
I
health
just
department?
want to
Okay,
know
okay,
that that recommendation
Make it a
is
condition.
going to be in as a condition.
So am I now saying I'm not denying the front yard setback? Because,
Oh, you decide that.
Under 2020.
I'm not putting, I don't want
no, I'm just, so am I taking that back from what I put into the record? Or do I just leave it that way, but everyone else is just agreeing to the 2020?
Well, on the 2020, it looks like the patio might be meeting it.
Right. So I'm staying on the record that I'm denying, it won't change the vote, that I'm denying the front yard setback. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
It's an interesting application.
Next, we have Michael Palladino at 124 Old Westlake Drive in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-20-5-7. Size and location is 49,957 square feet at 124 Old Westlake Drive, Montauk. The description is to allow a swimming pool and pool deck to remain and to construct fencing and gates on a parcel of land containing wetlands. A natural relief sought is a natural resources special permit Pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code, and 3 variances are required for this application. Variances of 70 feet, 14 feet, and 2.1 feet are required from 255-430 of the Town Code. For the proposed fence to be 30 feet, proposed gate to be 85.3 feet, and pool deck to remain 97.9 feet from wetlands where 100-foot setbacks are required. Zoning district A2 residence, zone X flood zone. Secret class is type 2, and I think member Johan, this was.
This is mine, yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board will remember that this hearing was held on February 4th, 2025. We were working when the most recent survey was August 27th, 2024. It was, the applicant was represented by Joel Halsey of Lighthouse Land Planning. This property received an administrative NRSP in December 19th, 22 to demolish the existing structure that had been damaged by fire and to build a approximately 3,000 square foot residence with 498 square foot attached garage and 1,076 square feet of decking, porch, and some other associated structures. The only COO that was ever issued on this property was issued in 1993. The current owner acquired the house in July of 21. The building permit was issued for the pool deck to be, among our issues here, by the way, we're looking for, excuse me with this, 3 variances, I guess there were 3 variances. And one of our issues was the pool deck. And the issue, the building permit was issued for the deck to be 100.7 feet from wetlands. The current deck sits 97.9 feet from wetlands, and that's going to require a 25.5-inch variance. The gate and drive, the proposed gate requires a 14.7-foot variance from wetlands, but it's proposed in a typical location, given how gates work there, and there was some discussion of that being off the property as well, and possibly the most conforming location on the property relative to the driveway. It is also, even though it's within, it needs a 14.7-foot variance, the wetlands that requires the variance is across a paved road. It's across Old Westlake Drive, so there is that for a buffer. The fence that it became an issue for us and we had a big discussion about was one that is proposed to be 30 feet from the wetlands, and it's in a location that does not have a fence located there historically. This is a very deep lot with a significant amount of cleared land to the north of the house, and the proposed fence does not follow any topographical or environmental features that might justify its being located at their proposed location. It can easily be moved southward to the estimated, to be established at least 50 feet from wetlands. And I'm going to say that that's the only way in which I would approve the fence. I'll get to that in a minute. In terms of the pool deck, I find that the required 2.1 or 25.5-foot variance would not significantly change the environmental impact and that the deck will have on the wetlands to the north, and that the construction of the deck, while having been done without the care and precision it deserved, was still within the spirit of the basic design of what was originally proposed. The fence can clearly and easily be moved, as I've said, and I'm willing to approve this fence if it is moved. We can discuss the number, but it was suggested at that night by the planning department that a 50-foot number was achievable, and I think it is. Having been on the site, there's certainly nothing that indicates it has to be in any one location. Bringing it back away from the wetlands makes perfect sense to me. So I think that when I look at this, I look at the variances when needed, except for the fence here. The variances, ones that were reasonable for me and ones I can approve. In term reference to the NRSP standards, 255-420, I don't find that the work that exists will significantly cause damage to existing wetlands and will not change the character of the neighborhood, and that the location of the proposed fence has to be moved to satisfy 25-420, and I think that has to be done. Location of the gate is not one that bothers me because I think that it's in, there was still a discussion of the bridle path, but basically it's not one that I think that they can do. We can reasonably expect it to be at 100-foot setback. So I'm willing to approve this application, but I do expect that the fence will have to be moved to at least the 50-foot mark in order for me to approve the fence, and that's where I stand with it.
Thank you. Denise?
Terry, would you? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
You want?
Don't worry.
It's okay.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Go to the Montauk
Okay.
people first.
Better rule.
I agree with Member Johan's assessment of the 70-foot variance for the fence. I didn't know it was before us that we could actually relocate it tonight. Because that's probably the only aspect of this application I would be denying. The 70-foot variance for the fence is able to meet better standards by moving to the south towards the existing improvements and would increase setbacks to the wetlands, and this was also recommended in the TAM. The property has important wetlands, brackish in nature, and they play an important role in flood control, maintenance of water quality prior to recharge into Lake Montauk, and this is an HPOD district. It plays a significant role in the storage of water. They also provide important habitat for wildlife. I don't think the 70-foot request meets the grant of a variance or NRSP for reasons already stated. The requests for the pool deck and proposed deck are minimal in nature and will not have any detrimental or negative effect on the natural features. I am approving these two requests, but denying the 70-foot request for the proposed fence.
Okay. Terry?
Okay. All right. Well, I agree with my fellow board members, pretty much. Yeah, the pool deck, that was a small variance, the 2.1 feet. I have no problem with that. You know, the agent, Joe Halsey, had explained how it was staked out and then staked out for the pool, and then there was a discussion with the homeowner who said, oh, yeah, well, that looks good or something, and said, yeah, go with it. It was a little off, and this is the way it ended up, but it's only 2.1 feet, and it's, I think, even less, a little farther up along the side of the pool. I have no problem with that. The gate, now that I know it's okay to be in the bridle path, I am also approving that variance. It's 14.7 feet, as stated before. The wetlands are across the South Lake Drive from there. And the gate, it looks like it's 4 feet, so I believe it does not need Architectural Review Board approval. So as long as it's 4 feet, it's that. And so it comes to the fence. It comes to the fence, and this neighbor, the 70-foot variance is way out of line, and I would like more than the 50-foot minimum on that. When we went to the property, the houses on either side also were just like wide open. It was really pretty cool. This property, as well as the one to the west and the east, it was just wide open fields, and you could just feel the wildlife, you know, walking around with some freedom, which I like to see. So I would like to make that more than a 50-foot back, maybe split the difference between where it was proposed and where the pool starts. I'm not sure what that would come to. And I'm approving that, except for the denial of the fence.
Okay. Jean?
Okay, I am in agreement mostly with my fellow board members. I will not belabor all the points or basically agreeing with the way they assess the standards and the application relative to that. So I am approving the front gate because it is minimal, it's not a substantial variance. I'm approving the variance for the mistake in the construction of the pool. Mr. Halsey did, as Member Berger said, go through why it happened, how it happened. It would be great if there were never these mistakes, but there it is, and we've approved similar things on other applications. And I mean, I'll just, during the public hearing, we asked Tyler Borsak where he thought the best, a good place for the fence would be, and he said it should, need a variance of 50 feet, not 70 feet. So, I guess moving it 20 feet further back than where it is, that would be different, I think, than what Member Berger is saying. But I would be, given that that's what the planning
He said
department
at least
recommends.
50 feet.
Yeah, at least, right?
At least.
So I'm technically denying the 70-foot variance, but, I'm sorry, did I make a mistake?
I'm just not understanding that logic when what we have before us is a 70-foot variance request.
Well, I said I'm denying that.
No, I'm not questioning you. I'm just questioning the process in terms of, we don't generally change what's being requested during a deliberation.
But because it came up
I don't know.
in the public hearing,
Planning
we,
department makes a lot of recommendations. It's not generally something we have to
Right.
agree or disagree with.
do they have to come back with a modification or?
No, so we just deny the fence.
Well, yeah, the way that we could do it, I think, off the top of my head, would be you can deny the fence as proposed, but as a condition of approval, you can offer them an approved fence in the modified location. Do you know what I mean? So, you're denying the fence as requested, but you're approving a fence in an alternate location. I can figure out how to work it in if there's enough board members in support of that.
And it's a 6-foot fence too, so we need ARB approval too? No?
Not at
This
the
is
rear.
all, it's waterfront, so the area you're talking about is rear yard. So anything 6 foot is allowed as of right.
This is this front yard?
What's
In a-
the
in a
proposed
lot
way
where-
of fencing as a
What?
fence location?
I don't think we decided that yet.
Okay,
So your turn,
Yeah.
right, Chairman?
my turn.
Oh, yeah, there's you, sorry.
Is our chair.
Yeah, so that's.
I agree with, oh, go ahead, let her finish.
And it's considered a front yard, but I don't know, there might be an exception for fences with that.
It shows far setback
No.
from the front yard line. At some
No,
point,
Hear from you.
the waterfront side is considered the front yard. Oh,
I know.
oh, right, yeah.
Okay. Do you want me to go through this right now? Because I do know the answer to this. So on a lot, right, waterfront, so that's your front yard. So really,
Oh,
where the driveway gate is, Terry, because that was originally what you brought up, the height of the driveway gate as 4 feet, that's the rear yard. So it can be it could be 6 feet with no ARB. The area that we're talking about where the fence is between the house and the front yard line. So we would actually just have to look at the dimensional table based on the size of this lot to determine how far back the front yard area becomes the side and rear yard area. So I know that the current building inspector would do that based on the more restrictive setback, which is for accessory structures. So, I mean, I can pull it if you guys want me to. But basically, if you could you do me a favor, Morgan, and zoom out?
Yeah.
Because this lot is so deep, technically speaking, right, this house really meets setbacks from the front yard, right? It doesn't mean just because there's an area between the house and the water that that's all your front yard. At some point, your front yard becomes your side or your rear yard. So you use the dimensional table to determine that. You use the dimensional table, Terry, to determine that because it tells you what the required principal and accessory structure setback is. So once you've surpassed the accessory structure setback, required setback for a front yard, anything further back than that property line is your side or your rear yard. In like long, narrow properties like this, obviously, there's places, the property owner can choose to place a house beyond the setback.
Mhm.
So the easiest way, without me having to pull this up right now, is we can just approve it, and that the applicant will be aware that if it gets tossed from the building department because it requires ARB, you're going to need ARB, or you're going to have to cut it down to 4 feet.
Okay,
Thank you.
But we're denying the fence.
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Well,
With an option for,
Deny the fence, okay.
we have,
You go.
did we have an alternative location for the
Yeah,
fence?
I'll tell you what I thought. I'm agreeing with the vice chair. Of course, we're going to deny the fence. I should have stated that. But we very often sit here and then say, is there a compromise we can make that the board can agree on? So I volunteered the idea to follow up on what Tyler had said, that a 50-foot setback rather than the 30 would be more acceptable to the planning department.
And Denise?
I mean, if we can do that in terms of our process, as Jameson seems to think we can, I think that would be a reasonable compromise.
Yeah.
If the other board members agree with me.
Yeah, I accept Tyler's recommendation.
Well, he said at least.
No, I'm just speaking for me, so, me as a board member, sorry.
Okay.
You can,
Well, I'm denying the fence.
Okay, I would agree with the alternate on that too, providing a condition. I mean, if, I don't know, if we are denying it, and I think I'm okay with the other variances. I find the pool is de minimis and the front gates are as well. I think our nexus for denying the fence, and I think we should be clear as this as a board, is that the definitions and the purposes of the natural resources is to protect the wetlands and the habitat within those areas of the wetlands. And I think that it's prudent for us to question, the location of even fences, because they do impede that. And I believe strongly that the purposes of the code are to protect the natural habitat, not just the wetlands.
Right.
So,
I agree.
well,
so I just want that to be clear
Well
in
said.
our decision as
Yes.
to why we're denying that.
agreed.
Okay? Are we good?
Yes, I'm good with it.
I'm good.
What about the council?
I'm good.
Next, we have Cynthia Rowley at 69 Seaside Avenue, Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-32-4-20. The size and location is 20,318 square feet at 69 Seaside Avenue, Seaside Shores, map number 1518, lot 30 in Montauk. The description is to construct a 129 square foot deck on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. Relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town, and one variance of 89 feet from 255-430 of the Town Code is required to construct a 129 square foot deck 11 feet from the west freshwater wetlands where 100 foot is required. Zoning district is B residence, AE flood zone, AE 14 flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. And member Johan, was this yours
Yes,
too?
it is mine. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we'll remember next time.
Board will remember that this hearing was held on February 4th, 2025. We were working from a survey from October 11th, 2016, sorry, and it was from F. Michael Hemmer. They were represented, the applicant was represented by Joel Halsey, again, of Lighthouse Land Planning. We had to consider an 89-foot variance, as was just read in. The deck would only be 11 foot from wetlands, the proposed deck. Originally, this property was developed in 1976. The current owners have been in possession of the property since 2011. There was a ZBA review of 2017 to demolish a one-story residence and to rebuild on this site a 1,375 square foot house. That application required 3 variances. I think they're significant to see the size of the variance. They required a 90, a 95, and a 144 foot variance in order to approve that project. That's significant because anyone who's visited the site and knows this area, all of those houses are basically set in the wetlands, and so anytime you move 3 inches, you're going to need a variance. But they are significant and they are important to keep in mind. That application was approved, however, with those variances on July 20th, 2017. In January of 2020, a modification was granted to the 2017 approval to adjust and raise the sanitary system to create a 2-foot separation at groundwater. After work was begun, they realized that the groundwater level was 3 foot higher than was proposed or originally thought to be, and the modification was granted. That's a significant amount of work, and the modification moved forward because the value to the site and the value to the wetlands was going to be enhanced with this with the the new IA system, and having it go in was certainly a benefit, but it was a significant amount of work that had to be done to raise that. Let me just see here. Oh, yeah, the only C of O, the C of O for the property was granted in July of 2021. One point before I talk about the deck itself was we noticed in photos an outdoor shower to the north side of the house that was not part of the 2017 approval. And at that time, Mr. Halsey agreed that it would have to be removed because it sits directly, as the house does, practically directly in wetlands. It's certainly something that was not part of the 217. When I review this and I look at what's being asked for, they're asking for 129 square foot deck extension, not a big number. It would extend out from an existing deck that we have on the back side of the house there. I think on the surface, that is something that you could look at and say, this is not a large ask. However, I want to go back to the 217 approval. I was not part of that. Two board members here were. They can comment what their perspective is on this. But this was an involved process. You read and see what the way we went through to come up with how to approve this and how to allow it. There was a serious amount of consideration done. In respect for what they did then, I asked myself, not whether or not they would have approved a larger deck. I can't say whether they would or they wouldn't have, but I would think that this was really approval that was taken to the max. This was something that was carefully considered and was something that had to be labored over because we have all the water conditions there. We know Miller Avenue. We know what goes on down on Seaside. We know that they have a right to build a house, and that right was granted them with the approval in 2017. However, when I look at this, I say to myself, unfortunately, they have very little opportunity to expand. I understand that. I would say that as far as I'm concerned, it does not come up to satisfy the NRSP standards of 255-420, and that we're still, even though this is a small amount, we're still being asked to approve an 89-foot variance. And I'm just said on the previous case, I'll say again, any house in this condition will always require a variance. At what point, though, is it at the maximum that can be allowed on this site? I think in 17, they tried to put the parameters of what the maximum is. And I want to respect that decision and make our own decision here to say that while it's not a large ask in terms of square area, it is a large ask in terms of what we're doing on a very confined and very sensitive site. So I am going to deny this application on that basis.
Thank you. Terry?
Okay, yes, this was a very complicated application way back in 2017, and a lot of gnashing of teeth and discussion went on. Mostly, I guess a lot of it was obviously for the entire reconstruction, but all the variances were huge, and then it was going to be a standard septic system at that time with the redevelopment of the property until they ran into some water, and the septic had to be changed to an IA system, a shallow field that they could cover because they couldn't meet the groundwater separation. At the time, most of the discussion was all around that and construction protocol and culverts and flooding that goes through this whole neighborhood. I don't remember exactly my thoughts, but I know that this board did approve, we approved a first-story deck and a second-story deck. And I think for me that that's about all that this property could handle. This 129 feet doesn't sound like it's much, but it's still a huge variance. And I don't think it meets the standards. I know there's going to have to be some kind of helical pile, which concerns me. Was in the area of the culvert that goes through this property. It's noted on one of the surveys. It's not far from here. And this whole project, this whole neighborhood is, so flood prone that I think this house has had its maximum as far as anything else on the ground. So I too am going to deny it. I don't think it meets the NRSP standards. There was one neighbor also, the neighbors to the east on Miller Avenue that opposed it. They were concerned about flooding that has happened on their property since then, but that's neither here nor there. But I'm going to deny it.
Thank you, Jane.
Sure, thank you. So I was not a member of the board at the time. Of course, I, listened to my fellow board members during this hearing. And Mr. Chair, I know you spoke, very importantly and strongly about all, and as did Member Berger, right, all the work and vetting that went into this application. But I see this issue of the deck differently so far than my fellow board members for two main reasons. Number one, actually 3 reasons. Number one, the deck that was approved is actually in a position that is in the wetlands. And I know this is a very substantial setback too, but because the board approved that, I would imagine that's where the egress comes out of the house. But still, this feels like a natural place, not natural, it's a natural resource to extend the deck. And I cannot articulate or define how it will not meet natural resources special permits. It's lifted, I don't even know how many, maybe 1 or 2 pilings. We talked about not having treated lumber. And I just can't, I don't think that I can nail down and point to certain facts of how this extension would degrade or put in peril the wetlands more than, what's already on the property. So I am looking to approve this request for this deck extension. I will say during the hearing, Mr. Halsey offered some revegetation. He said, well, what about 129 square feet? I would like to accept that offer. I don't think we didn't talk about more re-veg during the hearing, so I'm not going to go there. But in terms of where it's positioned, I would just want to see it positioned in the way that is most directly sort of buffering that extra deck from the wetland, if that makes sense. So we can talk about position, but that's where I am on it.
Thank you. Denise?
This is a tricky one.
Yeah, wasn't it?
It's like spin the Jeopardy wheel. Size of this lot is 20,318 square feet, and the lot area without the wetlands is 8,586.27 square feet, which obviously is making this a most severely constrained lot due to the presence of wetlands. This area is also prone to flooding and chronic drainage problems, so if approved, will this affect other property owners? Didn't we have a letter of opposition on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The wetlands play a vital role in containing these environmental issues and protect Lake Montauk from pollutants. The residence itself is basically sitting in wetlands. The property already had very significant variances granted in 2017, and there's also, if I understand this correctly, other decking on the house, which is a roof deck. The portion of the deck approved by this board in 2017 is actually closer to the wetland than what's being asked for today. So the question I kept going over and over about is, if this deck was a part of the original application, would this board have approved it? What keeps popping up in my head in terms of NRSP standards is the fact that this is chronic flooding and drainage issues, and now we're going to cover it some more. So if this extension is approved, one can say it's already in a cleared area, but what would be the detrimental effect if the deck is approved? Well, with the drainage issues, it may affect the longevity of the deck over time. Now, on the other hand, one can say it provides outdoor space while offering a raised platform. But if approved, we'd also have to ensure the deck is built with adequate drainage to prevent water from accumulating. This is an area of chronic flood and drainage issues. This is a hard ask for me. I really was not a part of the 2017 decision, and whether or not this board would have approved that, what's before us tonight then, is really, in my world, irrelevant. So I have to say, looking at this application as coming before me today, like it's an application that I'm looking at for the first time, which is true. I feel that it does not meet the standards, and I'm going to be denying this application. But if not approved, I think the outdoor shower has to be addressed, and it has to be brought to the attention of the code enforcement, and they would have to deal with this violation. So I don't feel this meets the standard for grant of a natural resource special permit.
Thank you. My assessment, I mean, you'll often hear me say we have to give deference to previous determinations, and so being that it's a recent determination, relatively recent, I'm going to rely on the zoning board's written determination, and I'm going to bring out highlights of that determination. I'm going to read some highlights of it. And the determination says, with the exception of the existing driveway location, the residence is completely surrounded by freshwater wetlands. We're located within 15 feet of the structure. It says the subject premises are located with one of the most complex and hydraulically active sub-watersheds within Lake Montauk watershed. Paragraph 3, this property is among the most severely constrained by wetlands as any approved property reviewed by the zoning board over the past 20 years or more. Paragraph 4, it is the planning department's opinion that footprint reduction, along with other mitigation measures, makes the application reasonable for the board to consider the proposed size increase. However, the environmental constraints of the property are extreme and unique. The potential for the severe short and long-term adverse impacts to the wetlands is very high. The wetlands completely surround the residence. Going on, the project will bring the property up to the modern standards and reduce impact on the wetlands. This is based on the proposed lot size. The applicant's project will reduce coverage on the property and consolidate the footprint. So again, 2017, the footprint, the size, all this, and the wetlands are of prime importance here. I can't get beyond, I know it seems like a small ask, like Member Johan is saying, and I can't get beyond that further expansion on this property is in the benefit of the wetlands. I think the zoning board in 2017, I was part of it at that time. We labored over it. It was well thought out. We spent time on it, and I think the the decision at that time speaks for itself. And so therefore, I too will be denying this application.
Can I ask a question about the shower? So, no, I know, but I just want to ask procedurally. So, because I heard, sorry. The vice chair say, oh, we should refer this to code enforcement, but aren't we allowed to say as a condition of, because it's getting approved, as a condition of approval, the shower, oh, I'm sorry.
I kind of said it that way.
Oh, I'm
'cause I
sorry,
didn't
got
know
it.
it was gonna be
No,
approved.
forget it.
What I actually said was if this is approved, to refer it to code enforcement.
Sorry, that was a,
It isn't getting approved.
A glitch
So
in my
that could be a
brain.
condition of approval, removal of the outdoor shower. That's sitting in the wetlands.
It could have been.
I mean, it came up at the hearing. It was just put there. There was no building permit.
We're denying it, so we can.
Yeah, no, that was my silly.
So if we're denying the application,
Then we have no,
We have-
then there's no conditions
we
to.
can't address the outdoor shower.
Sit here.
So then I'm recommending that it gets referred to code enforcement.
Yeah.
Because we're made aware now of something on a property.
Yeah, you see.
Okay. Council, we okay? Thank you, Joel. All right, that ends our post-hearing decisions. On other decisions, we have Shapiro at 8 Ocean Lane in Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-176-3-10, and it's a preliminary revegetation discussion. So Morgan, you want to take us off on that?
Yeah, so
I will share.
this is a recent application from the board, and the determination was filed back in November of '24. And there's a bit of a unique condition about the revegetation, and the applicant, I don't know if you all got to read the memo. The applicant proposed like a preliminary plan, and just would like the board's feedback on if a formal plan were to be submitted with those species and size and spacing, if that would then meet the board's condition of approval for the revegetation. The condition was unique because it is basically acting as a restoration and also screening on the southern property line. Duneland vegetation typically doesn't have a lot of height to it. So the applicant is including about 5 to 6 foot eastern red cedar trees along the southern property line to act as screening. And essentially, the condition requires that it be approved by the board. So you will also get to see the actual final plan before a building permit is issued. So it's more of just like a preliminary discussion about what the species that were submitted, might work for what the board had in mind with this condition.
And the planning department is in approval
Well,
of
I
what
think the planning
was.
department doesn't have
I think I
input
read-
because it's not part of a re-veg. It's defined as a screening. Is that correct,
Well,
Morgan?
so the wording is the establishment of a high-quality mature woody buffer shall be established on the area marked on the survey as to be cleared and revegetated on the south side of the property to protect a neighboring
Does the
parcel.
plan meet that requirement?
Does the plan, do those species included in the memo and the sizing and spacing essentially meet that requirement? I think really, the planning department is fine with the duneland species that are included in the plan is fine with the planning department. It's more of I think the screening is the question mark, is if it satisfies that buffer requirement to the southern property that's affected.
We didn't stipulate anything about species or height.
It's just consisting of a majority of mature woody vegetation
So the screening?
for the revegetation plan. Yeah.
And
And a high quality.
We don't stipulate anything to do with the screening.
I don't remember a discussion of screening during the.
Well, screening is not explicitly stated in the condition. It's supposed to act as a buffer to protect the neighboring parcel. Is the wording.
So
Yeah, go ahead.
it's a species that's native, right?
Yeah, it's eastern red
Eastern
cedar.
red cedars, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly appropriate in that location.
Okay.
Then it would come back to you, the planning, to say, are there enough? Are they spaced correctly? And what height? Is that what'll happen?
I mean, it's technically, the revegetation plan is just to be approved by the board or not its delegate. It's just to be approved by the board. So you will see a final plan in a future work session to be approved for the building permit.
What are we doing now? Just
Which will
telling
be
you.
reviewed by
I'm going to go back to the applicant and say, the board is satisfied with, this preliminary species list, and then please have a formal submission prior to building permit.
So,
fine with
but can
that,
I just
so-
ask a question? Because remember that section of the property, there was a lot of discussion, that it's filled with water, even though it has not been declared a wetland. it was, talked a lot about in the TAM. So when you talk about woody species that are native kind of to that ecosystem that's there, I know that red cedars are native out here, but it's sort of not, I'm curious because I don't think it would have been on your list of plants that you would have recommended, so it's a little off for me. It's like a different.
I mean, there's really not a ton of woody species that would meet really the buffer requirement to the neighboring parcel and also, the dune land.
So your question to us is, what was our intent on the buffer? Is that your
Right,
question?
right. Like, what is the species?
What was our intent on the budget?
Right,
That should be an easy question to answer. So do we know what that is?
I mean, I think I remember because there's dune land in the back, right, the back of the property. Right now it's been disturbed and.
Yeah, there's a lot of bamboo on the property.
But historically, I believe it was established that it's invaded what they're taking out.
The bamboo.
The bamboo, right. So I think that's dune land in the back and it comes around and then it gets into this very wet area. So if you think about Beach Hampton, to answer that question from my perspective, my view on the buffer, my intent on the buffer would have been to sort of restore in a way that would have reflected.
So woody species like dune land, woody species like dune land, like typically we ask for dune land.
Right. Well, it's dune land and it's wet, so.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so the plan also includes high bush blueberry, which typically does well in the wet soils. So, we will see, something like the high bush blueberry that does well in more moist conditions.
So the cedar trees are not required.
Not necessarily. I mean, I'm asking the board if the cedar trees.
But we have an area of re-veg, right? That's
Right.
woody species. Is it our intent to continue that woody species as a buffer? That's the question.
That is what was for the buffer, the woody
That's the
species.
buffer.
So it's a buffer.
So we don't need the cedar trees.
Okay, so no cedar trees.
Is that,
I would be happy
Well,
without the cedar, but.
I mean,
Okay.
I think the reason it was offered, because the cedar trees will grow up to some reasonable height, and what else will grow up to a reasonable height that we want to recommend in dune land, right? We're not going to recommend pines any longer.
Yeah.
We're going to be looking for what can survive. So they will survive and reach a reasonable height.
Right.
So the question to me is what was the intention of the buffer? You've already brought that up. Do we need those to protect a viewscape or not?
Right.
The other vegetation you recommend always is going to do well in that area. But it's going to be much lower, as you've already pointed out,
Yeah.
2 to 3 feet.
I mean, it's very wet on that side.
Yeah.
So if cedars do well with their roots in water, I don't know.
It's going to be for
I don't
the
think
whole
we're
winter.
stipulating cedars, right?
Right.
Right.
So if the intent is, I would say this, maybe I'm trying to clarify this too. So if the intent is to keep it like a dune land habitat, then cedar trees are not required in our opinion. Is that, or in our,
Right.
just keep it standard woody dune land vegetation.
Okay, so, the bayberry, high bush blueberry, and then
What
the
about shad?
cover.
There's shad in that area, so I don't know, but.
Yeah, it's like also what's commercially available,
Button bush.
Well, we're going to see the plan, right? So.
Yeah.
So the species that you were looking for an approval for species.
It was really more,
Species
what
you're
was the intent
recommending.
of the buffer? Is the intent of the buffer to act as screening to the neighbor, or is it to be a wetland
I
buffer?
think the intent is to clarify that,
Dune land.
those trees,
Okay,
right? That's what you're asking us
basically, yeah.
So I think they're not required, and I don't want to go and redefine what we've already defined, right? I think that's a slippery slope. So I think if we're okay with just regular dune woody species, like you're saying, we're okay with it.
Because I
I agree
do,
with that.
yeah, I recall that the intent of the buffer was not screening.
Okay,
The intent of the buffer was to renaturalize a property
Okay.
that has been seriously
yeah,
degraded
okay.
and with all kinds of, whatchamacallits, like
It's an environmental concern and not a visual
I
concern.
think tonight, non-native.
Yeah, the
sort of-
invasive species that are, yeah, there's a lot of
so
bamboo.
That, to me, was my recollection of the intent, but
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Sorry.
All right, we go into extensions of time. Has Hispaniola Trust at 9 Shipwreck Drive in Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-152-2-8.36, an extension of time of a 2021 determination. That's recent. Anybody have make a
Is there,
motion?
is it in process or is it?
They are, so a building permit has not been issued. There was a requirement to remove structures from the scenic easement that's on the property, which is on this side, this is an old aerial, these are gone, and rip out the lawn. They've also ripped out the lawn. So they are kind of just meeting their conditions prior to a building permit at this point.
Did they finish the work?
No.
Oh, okay,
They're applying for a
They're
building
applying
permit.
for a building.
okay, got it. Thank you.
They need
I'm
to
okay with
extend
it.
the
Okay, make a
approval.
motion.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's good. Okay, in the matter of Hispaniola Trust, 9 Shipwreck Drive, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-152-2-8.36, I make a motion to approve the extension of time.
Second.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have Malillo at 31 Gilbert Path, Amagansett, Suffolk, tax map number 300-151-3-22. And that's an extension of time of 2018 determination.
Isn't this house completed?
No, didn't they do the work?
I remember, this is the house
What are
that's
they
like
trying to
black
get?
and it's
Yeah,
set
it's a
back?
block house.
Yeah, I thought it was all
Houses
done.
work.
So they have not, it's to maintain a valid permit, is the reason. for the
maintain
extension.
It's to what, I'm sorry?
Maintain a valid building permit.
But they're
Okay.
done. I'm confused, sorry.
Well, they might have to extend it in order to come back for a CO request.
Oh, yeah, I think there was some discrepancy with something that
They
they
have
did in
to
the
do
front of the
this
house. They
first.
might have, okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're good, everyone? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
we're good.
In the motion of Malillo, 31 Gilbert Path, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-151-03-22, I make a motion to approve the extension of time.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have Gazowski at 12 Gainsborough Court in Montauk, Suffolk, tax map number 300-19-4-23. It's an extension of a 2023 determination.
Yeah, it's up.
They're in the middle of doing the work, so it's
Looks
to
like it.
finish up the project on
All right.
the CO.
Just have to extend the approval.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
I'm okay.
I'll make
Go ahead.
a motion for Gazowski at 12 Gainsborough Court, Montauk, tax map 300-19-4-23, to approve the extension of time.
Second.
I'll concur, sorry.
I concur.
Concur. Thank you. Minutes of approval for February 25th.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals for Tuesday, February 25th.
I'll second it.
I'll concur.
I concur.
Concur. Thank you. We have resolutions, 124 Beach Lane and LLC at 124 Beach Lane, Wayne Scott. Suffolk tax map number 300-202-2-8.2-9.2. Board members, we just made this decision. This is, I forget what it was now. I don't recall whether it was.
This was the 5,000 square foot.
I know what the application was. I don't remember what it was. Did everybody?
We all
I think
We all
We all
approved.
it, yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
we all-
great. So therefore, I'll make a motion for 124 Beach Lane LLC at 124 Beach Lane, Wayne Scott, Suffolk tax map number 300-202-2-8.2 and 9.1,
Second.
as written.
Concur.
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 Yes, on the second.
Give her the second.
Next, we have Robert and Nicoletta Palma at 45 Seaview Avenue in Montauk, Suffolk tax map number 300-51-1-3.2.
Oh, that was mine, right? That was mine. That was the one with the
This was a
garage substation.
modification? Was this a modification? No.
Is it,
This was, I just forwarded it to you all again yesterday because I did
Yeah.
it a couple
Oh,
of
right.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's just a resolution amending the determination. There was a change in the architect who drafted the building plans, but there was no change to the design dimensions or plans, et cetera. And then the approved survey was updated after the board adopted it because it showed the approved sanitary system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Then I will make a motion in the case of Robert and Nicoletta Palmer of 45 Seaview Avenue, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-51-1-3.2 to accept the determination as written.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have Springmark LLC, 100 Runnymede Drive in Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-23-4.9. This is a correction to a typo or Scrivener's error in the 2018 determination. Council, yours, give us a brief on that.
Yes, so on that one, the approval was for a 3,509 square foot residence. And there were just a number of Scrivener's errors throughout the determination, going back and forth between 3,509 and then 3,500. And unfortunately, in the last paragraph where we say the, approved work, it says the 3,500. The plans accurately depict the 3,509, and it was requested by the applicant and also sort of with feedback from the building department that if this board were willing to adopt this resolution to just clarify that number, it would keep all of the records a little cleaner.
Okay. So in the matter of Springmark LLC, 100 Runnymede Drive in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-23-4-9, I make a motion to approve the resolution amending the determination as written, addressing the Scrivener errors.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Next, we have John Zuccotti at 91 Waters Edge Springs, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-83-7-8. And that's a correction of a 2024 determination.
I actually have this, I looked at this memo that Jamison sent us. This was to modify a determination to add approved building plans. In addition, the applicant submitted and the planning department approved amended plans showing a proposed bulkhead cap. This bulkhead cap has no substantive change to the planning department's original analysis. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution amended determination for John Zuccotti, 91 Waters Edge in Springs, Suffolk County Tax Map number 83-7-8.
I'll second it.
I concur.
Concur.
Concur. Thank you. Next, we have Jeffrey Moskowitz, 75 Shore Road, Amagansett, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-131-7-15. And this is a stipulation of settlement. Board members, you remember we discussed this.
Yes.
We're going to have a motion.
Oh, that's me. In the matter of Jeffrey Moskowitz, 75 Shore Road, Amagansett, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-131-7-15, make a motion to approve the stipulation of settlement.
Second.
I concur.
I concur.
Concur. Thank you. Vice Chair.
I would like to make a motion to adjourn the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting on March 11th at 8:29 PM.
Second.
Concur.
Concur.
Concur.